Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Babellion podcast. Today's guest is Gladia Boldt, and if you want to introduce yourself and/or plug anything, you can go right ahead.
I'm Gladia. Username is G1ADIA, and it's not because I believe that I'm number one. An L is just not available. So I've tried all of the variations to get it as close to my name as possible. And yeah, that's all that I'm going to plug for now.
All right, I guess we can jump right into it, into the first question. How did you get started modeling?
Well, originally, I applied for some agencies early in high school. Honestly, I talked about this in an episode with you on your podcast, just because I wanted an escape from high school. So I wasn't really doing it for the right reasons. I don't know what the right reasons would be, because the industry can be tricky, but I was jumping into it as an escape, and it didn't yield that for me. The agency that I almost signed with, I'm gonna keep it nameless, had very strict requirements in terms of measurements, and it's because, especially at that point, 4 or 5 years ago, designers didn't make clothes beyond a certain size, not just in the runway, but there's something called a fit model, and they're basically human mannequins. So designers will design clothes on them so that they have humans, but you have to stay within a certain... And I have bigger bones. I'm a tall woman, so I couldn't shave my bones down. And it was a little bit problematic. And I gave it up pretty much after that because it didn't work out. And as soon as I'd let it go, my agent, Rachel, reached out on Instagram. So I think it's interesting because it's that saying that people repeat, which is as soon as you let things go and you let the universe take care of it, sometimes it'll come back. And if you chase things too much and you try to force it too much, you're putting up walls accidentally. And I met with the office with JAG models, and they were really kind. And I didn't hear back from them for several months. One, because I was very awkward when we were taking the photos, because being yourself is a lot harder than playing a character. And the second was just because there was a pandemic that hit in March of 2020. So I didn't hear back until the summer. And I've only started development about a month ago because they want me in New York. Yeah.
Are you more happy or more comfortable now modeling comparatively to when you were in high school and just started modeling?
Definitely. People's images of themselves fluctuate all the time. And now that I have an understanding that my ability to see myself less critically is going to change constantly, and I don't shame myself for that, that has helped. Rather than believing, I think radical acceptance, body acceptance, I think that's amazing. But some people can't do that. And I know that just like my weight fluctuates, so does my ability to perceive myself as what I actually am. So now that I know that it's not one thing, it's not going to be amazing forever, I'm not always going to love myself, it's made it easier. I don't know if that makes sense.
I guess it's kind of yourself getting more comfortable in your own skin, I guess, in a way. So I had a question, but it totally flew right out.
That's fine.
I guess, so your fascination and modeling started in high school or? Okay.
I think it's something that a lot of people talk about because the industry is pretty small, which is why girls who are not super kind or super professional do not last, because everyone knows each other and everyone talks, all of the stylists, all of the photographers. And because it was small, and I didn't know much about it, it was just intriguing. And I think we all have things that are intriguing because we can't see into it. So I realize now that it is a job. You're moving merchandise at the end of the day. And that these people are not perfect, and they're not superhumans, obviously. No one is. No industry has people like that. So when I stopped taking it so seriously, I still take it seriously, but when I realize it's not, I don't have to place everything on a pedestal.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good that you kind of switched to like your mindset to a more kind of healthy thinking way of it. So what kind of pushes you in this industry, or what like enjoyment do you get out of modeling now that you kind of became more comfortable within your own skin?
Just meeting humans. It's the same thing that we experience all the time. Whenever we film anything, whenever we write anything, create anything, young artists and older artists just have their own stories. And I mean, I'm someone who's prone to anxiety, and I do sometimes like to cut myself off and isolate myself. So then when I force myself to not do that, and I have to in acting, modeling, wherever, I just get to see more stories and see other humans and hear from them. And I think that's very important. This sounds very cliched, but...
No, I think that sounds really amazing. Like,
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what type of work have you been doing in New York?
So it's development work right now. So it's a lot of digitals, a lot of test shoots. Some of them are based around my face, beauty shoots. Those typically you can book more work off right away because control over your body is hard in shots, and the camera shows everything. So if you're a little bit uncomfortable, it'll pick that up. So I've done a few tests now with a few photographers that JAG knows, and they advance it, meaning that they pay for it now, and then whenever I hopefully get a first paycheck, they take that out so that they can get girls started.
Okay. Have you done modeling in Philadelphia?
I did it once.
Okay.
I mean, I've done it with friends, but I did it once with she was the women's photographer for Urban Outfitters at that time, and it was 9th grade. And I had no idea as to what I was doing, but it was fun.
That's good. I guess that was kind of a while ago, but kind of what is like kind of the comparison in doing modeling in New York compared to modeling in Philadelphia? I guess like what's the kind of the differences and or similarities between the both?
Well, every market, as you know, is different. We see that in film a lot. I don't have enough experience really to speak on that, but I will say that there's an energy here where people are just about their work, and they're about, I don't want to say themselves, but people aren't too concerned with judging other people. So I think in some ways it's easier in the city just because people are so busy. Not that they're not busy in Philadelphia, but it's just a mindset. So I don't know enough about the Philadelphia market, but I do know that here you go do your job and then you don't take it home, whether it was a good or a bad experience. And I think it's easier for me to say that because I don't live here. So this is a totally different experience, whereas when I'm in Philadelphia, I go back to my apartment, I go back to my house, whatever. I'm still going to be carrying that more with me because it's tied with my home, you know?
That makes sense. So have you learned a lot during modeling over the past few years?
I've learned to, I already said this, but to not take everything so damn seriously, to just enjoy things. I mean, it is just creating. Yeah, you're moving merchandise, but just like when you write a story, you're hoping that it'll sell. But at the end of the day, you're there to do something, to put our skills and our ambitions to actual action, which is what we missed during the pandemic. So it's definitely taught me appreciation of all of the jobs that people have, because all the technicians and all of the people who are putting hours in beyond the people whose faces are on the camera, in front of the camera, are doing a lot. So I think that's what it's taught me the most.
Oh, that's really amazing. So you kind of said that COVID kind of lulled your experience, kind of once it first hit, kind of lulled you out of like a job modeling and stuff. But what in other ways has COVID affected your ability to do modeling?
Well, I didn't start the work because I couldn't get to New York. We'd had to quarantine for 14 days if we were leaving the state. And I hadn't had the vaccine yet, and it just wouldn't have been responsible of me, especially because I moved back home in January. So I would be going back home to my family, and I couldn't do that. And I can blame the stall on the pandemic. I think it was also just that I wasn't comfortable with myself, and my agent knew that, and she wanted me to wait, and she wanted me to learn how to. For instance, I've always had this weird fixation on one side of my face. So this is the side of my face that I usually hate showing. And I've talked about it, and it's so vain, and it's so fucking stupid. And yet, I'll think about it all the time if this is ever showing. But now I realize it doesn't matter, because it's just my face. So that was not something that that's not a conclusion I would have come to last year, even though it sounds very silly.
So in a way, the COVID kind of helped you realize or be more comfortable about how you look and stuff? Because I feel like, because I experience that too, and my sister does as well, like fixating like on a small area of like your face and or body, and you can't like stop thinking about it until it's like fixed or you overcome it. So that's a very hard thing to overcome.
I think it is normal, and this is not a radical idea. A lot of people say this, and it's said maybe too much, but with social media, it's hard not to do that. And it's only recently that I've realized, just for instance, it seemed like a lot of people were working during the pandemic. A lot of artists, models, actors, filmmakers, because they put all of their content out and they space it out. So you always feel like you're missing out. There's the FOMO, and then there's the pressure you put on yourself to put out as much as they do. But it's just, people spaced it out. Just like when I put up content that I look best in. Everyone else does that. And so that has helped.
Oh, that's really good. Have you, or what do you think of the general stereotypes around models?
Well, you're obviously not able to give as much of your voice, and I don't want to say your brain, but people are not necessarily there to ask about how you think or what you've experienced, which makes sense because it is a job. And I think it is just like so many jobs where you're there to do your work, and sometimes people don't have the energy to ask about your day and to engage with you personally. And it's not because people don't want to, but sometimes people just can't. So of course there's stereotypes for a reason. They're stereotypes because they're stereotypes. And I think most of them are just there because people don't know a lot about the industry. And certain stereotypes, I think, I don't obviously believe that all models are stupid or that they don't have ambitions, because all of the women at my agency, a lot of them have other side hustles, a lot of them own businesses, a lot of them are in school. And regardless, they're still working. And if they're not working, they're existing. We have these weird ideas about what's success, right? So, but at the same time, the stereotypes about the industry being really focused on your shell, like your physical appearance, that's true, of course.
Yeah.
Because it is just what you present to people. So some of it's true.
I guess. Okay. I was just going to say, I guess there's good and bad stereotypes, but so kind of, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but like, I guess, what are some of the good what are some of the good stereotypes that kind of are true and should be highlighted in the field?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever heard that. I mean, I haven't ever heard that.
If there is even such a thing. I don't even know if
there has to be a thing.
I don't even know if a good stereotype exists.
There are true stereotypes, and there are also stereotypes that are friendlier. I'm trying to think of any that are friendly about... Can you think of any friendly stereotypes about modeling?
Now that I'm thinking of it, I guess there's not really any good stereotypes.
I don't...
Yeah.
Maybe I'm sure that there are.
Yeah.
People are...
Why?
People are...
Why aren't there good stereotypes?
I don't know. These are good questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't. Going back to your original question, though, or one of your original questions, I don't know if there are good stereotypes at all.
Yeah.
Because the definition of stereotype,
Yeah.
it's going to be blanket statements about any group of people.
Yeah. So I guess there is not really any.
Not that I can think.
I guess we can just move on then. Have you noticed a progression towards breaking gender norms or Western beauty standards? Yeah.
So the first front, breaking gender norms, I think is slower. I mean, it is slower in the industry. There is a push for the androgynous look, but without any I don't know if I can say this, but I feel like there is an understanding as to what that means, like culturally, the significance of it. It's just people like the look. There is definitely a push for diversity, as there should be, in terms of sexuality, race, ethnicity, but it's slow, and body diversity, different body types. I mean, JAG is the first agency that has girls who are not just on one end of the spectrum. So you're not just straight-sized, size 0, or plus-sized. You have middle girls, like me. But there is not a male equivalent right now, and there is not necessarily a gender-inclusive branch right now. JAG, we're starting to break into that, but at the end, even though agencies are trying to sign people, clients are often going to go with what they've historically gone with because they know that the people who look at their advertising are used to a certain type of face. So it's just slow, but it's moving in the right direction.
Is the industry becoming more inclusive as they claim it to be?
I hope so. I don't know. I mean, I haven't started working with clients, and I don't know what those experiences will be like because I do exist in a body that would not have gotten work 2 years ago. So I might experience microaggressions that I haven't with people who work exclusively with JAG or are photographers who work with JAG, know JAG. So I don't know if it really is, but I will say that it seems like it is because a lot of JAG girls are booked, busy, and there are clients that their focus is basically on a real human. Like Aerie was one of the first.
Oh, okay.
And JAG has Iskra Lawrence, she was the first Aerie girl. And a lot of big retailers like H&M, they have opened up because they have different sizes. They now have models for different sizes. The high fashion end, definitely not moving at the same pace, but that's kind of expected because they're dealing with a history of what people have seen, and it's very hard to move past that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
that makes perfect sense. I guess my next kind of question is, what are your thoughts about the change from, I guess, 5 years ago, or even like, I guess it still is happening now, or with a couple years from now, or ago, but from the change of like models having to be like super skinny and have to be like a certain size, and from men and like women as well. But like from changing from that aspect into the changing to like you're seeing now, or we're seeing super or plus size models and any type of body model being able to model and like actually like be able to get into the industry.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on kind of changing from one aspect to the completely to the different aspect?
You raise a good point there, and that's why there has been some pushback from people because it is from one extreme. I don't want to say the other is an extreme because it's necessary that we move in that direction toward the future instead of backwards. But, well, we have beauty standards are constantly changing. There is no universal beauty standard. Most of it's Eurocentric. A lot of racism that's rooted in that. And the ideal body type, at least for women, it changes so drastically, often skewing toward wealthy people, because now often the norm, they're in terms of the ideal female body type, a lot of people will point to, like the BBL, like the Brazilian butt lift thing, that costs money, or people who are leaner, and that costs money because organic food is not subsidized. That it costs money to have a nutritionist, costs money to go to a gym, right? And then centuries ago, it was a woman who was a little bit more full-figured because she had enough money to eat. And as for the male side, I don't think it's happening really at all. I still am not seeing any body diversity in terms of male advertisements.
That's really interesting that you say that, because now that I'm thinking about it, I've never seen like a plus size like man or like a guy with like a beer belly, one could say, but
yeah,
that's really interesting because I never really thought about it on the opposite end with men. It's all like guys who are super like toned and everything. That's super interesting.
I don't know if it's again, I don't know if I'm going to phrase this properly, but women can be celebrated for their curves, whereas men don't. They've never been given that. And I know women. I mean, as a woman, women have to put up with a lot. So I'm not saying, but I think it's interesting because modeling is the one industry where they're paid more than men, and they're usually treated a little bit better. Doesn't mean that it's perfect, but I think it's just slower on that front. It's happening. I mean, some advertisers have changed who they're representing, who they're putting up. And also, what you were talking about just now, like the heroin chic look, I'm not going to name names because I think it's unfair that models have like entire labels placed on them as if they're responsible for that happening. But that was a beauty standard not that long ago. And now it's hourglass often, and that's also for a lot of women unattainable. So the point is that I think it's telling that it's constantly changing. It's all about making money. So the idea of judging your body, I understand how it happens because I've been there. But at the end of the day, you know that they're just trying to make money off of your insecurities, all of these industries. So sometimes if we can rationalize that, putting pressure on ourselves to look a certain way, you can slow that down. I know it's not that easy, but...
Yeah, I guess it's a lot easier to say than to actually do. Do you notice any differences or similarities between the photographers you work with in modeling and film directors in the way you communicate with them?
Yes and no. Every director and photographer has a different approach, obviously, and sometimes there's a more clear relationship built around respect. It's not always guaranteed to us in these industries. I think artists, it's very easy to exploit artists. I've accidentally done it. People have accidentally done it to me because our time, it's easy to just take it without considering what that means. The modeling industry only recently, as in the last decade, started developing laws that protect models, whereas actors have had that. But those relationships... Sorry, I got it.
It's okay.
They are... trying to think of some similarities. I've worked with people, I don't want to name names, of course, but I've worked with people who are all about just getting it done, getting the shot, and there isn't any focus on really connecting, which is absolutely fine because we have limited number of hours, especially if there are a number of girls around. It's tests where there are a lot of people trying to get photos and getting looks, makeup done. So I think sometimes the parallels that I see, because some directors also, they have an AD, they don't want to be bothered with other stuff, they just want to do their work, which is again fine. So I've found that I've connected with a lot of makeup artists and a lot of stylists and a lot of people who that's their job, to really focus on the person Whereas I understand that the photographer and the director can't do that a lot of the time.
Do you have better experiences with film directors or photographers?
I don't know if I can say yet either.
Or is it like more like equal kind of
I think
representation, I guess, or not opportunities, but experiences, more like similar experiences where it's not like one's better than the other. Or
I haven't. I've done more film than I have modeling. So, I mean, I've had mostly good experiences in film, I will say, and modeling has been good so far. But who knows what the future brings? Hopefully, my answer will in 6 months still be yes. They're equal, but right now they're equal.
Hopefully it's equal in
Yes.
6 months. So kind of transitioning the topic a little bit to Dollhouse.
Yes.
What was your experience acting in Dollhouse?
I really enjoyed Dollhouse. I hadn't acted in a while, and it was very refreshing to be able to do that again, especially with friends, with people who I respect and love. And I just like, it was a very collaborative process, I feel. You guys, I had that request to play music in between scenes, and I know that often that doesn't fly and I don't get that luxury, but you guys actually let me do that. So any input I had, you guys would take on, and again, respect, which is, you never know if you're gonna get that. And I've talked, sorry, am I talking over you?
No, I was just going to say that's really awesome to hear. I'm sorry to cut you off because
You
like
don't need to
that's
apologize.
what we were kind of trying to do. I'm sorry, continue.
No, you're fine. Well, that anecdote that I keep retelling about us going out to get candy, you know, it was a very, I feel like we've repeated that moment because freshman year we were always going to the library and we were studying or the tech center, and we'd grab a lot of sugar and that was an experience that I enjoyed every time, and I remember those memories, and I felt like it was a little bit of we got a little taste of that again, a little bit of normalcy. And I like the chaos a little bit. It wasn't too chaotic, but we were going with the flow and we were going with the energy, and it wasn't too contained, the environment. So I felt like it was more free to do what I wanted, as opposed to when sometimes you can't because you don't know the people very well on set and you're following their instructions, and the takes, you don't have control over any of the process, of course. So if you don't like the way something went, you can't speak up about it. But I didn't have that problem.
Oh, that's good.
With you guys.
I feel like you can't really go without any chaos in a film shoot because I feel like every film shoot is so chaotic because there's so many moving parts.
Yeah, there.
So many people involved, and it's like almost impossible for it to not be every which way.
Definitely. Yeah.
What sets Joshua apart from other directors? Have you noticed any growth from him over time?
100%. And I don't mean to sound like I'm calling him out or anything. We've only worked on two films together, but the first one, I gave him a little bit of feedback, and he took that in, and he respected what I had said, and he brought that the second time, as in, if I wasn't, I feel like it sounds like I'm, it was, again, he would accept my feedback more quickly, and he made sure to not make it personal, as in, like, sometimes directors accidentally have you use your own things, your own experiences, and usually at this age, we haven't healed from our experiences, so we don't really want to use them. And I was able to just be the character here. So I felt like there was a big difference. Not that he didn't the first time.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That's like perfect because I feel like, I don't know. I feel like everyone nowadays takes feedback like a personal attack when it's most oftentimes not a personal attack. Because I feel like in this field, especially comparatively to other fields like film and modeling and acting, I feel like you're constantly growing and you're constantly hearing feedback and stuff, and it's kind of hard not to take that personally.
Absolutely.
And I feel like Josh and you too do it very well, where you can separate feedback from personal attacks, because feedback is most often time not a personal attack. It's generally like wanting to help someone else grow with you. And I think Josh did that really well, and I feel like I wasn't there when you told him the feedback, but I'm sure that you communicated in a way where it didn't sound like you were personally attacking him, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't think it was on set, and I didn't feel uncomfortable, like nothing happened per se, but I think just the way that the project was brought up the first time was different, whereas I didn't experience that this time. And it's hard not to take that stuff personally, because we align ourselves with our art. We align ourselves with what we create. So when we are hearing words about that, it's hard to not feel like that's a reflection on us. But it isn't.
Yeah, because like I struggle that with like editing and stuff. Yeah. When I hear feedback, my constant like thing is to like, oh, it's a personal attack, when it's not necessarily the case. So how do you get into a character of a doll that is trying to gain autonomy? Autonomy? Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm working on a project right now with Zardosh Afshari, and he's an MFA student at Temple. And I'm experiencing the same thing, where I have to develop a total internal life, because my character isn't supposed to give too much, emote too much.
Yeah.
And with the doll, I think knowing that there was such a stark contrast between being the doll and being freed helped me, because I was able to understand that the movements were supposed to be robotic, and that I wasn't supposed to use my face or my eyes too much at that point, because I would have the chance later, and because it didn't call for it. And mind you, there are some takes where like it's a little bit off, like the smile's a little bit off, or which happens in modeling. Sometimes the shots are a little bit off if you're not focused, and or I'd be shaking, and the doll's supposed to be precise, and the movements weren't always precise, so it wasn't perfect. But Josh helped me a lot, because he would play it back, and he'd watch it and figure out what exactly I needed to adjust to make it a little bit more realistic as a doll. And then when we filmed that long take, Josh was giving stage directions, so I didn't have to worry about that. Instead, I was just focused on my face, pretty much, my eyes.
That's so cool. I guess you kind of said a couple things about it in the beginning to the first question about this, but what was kind of your experience while working with Josh on the Dollhouse? I guess especially that one long take. What was kind of your experience with that entire thing?
It's hard to reflect on, just because I do feel like it was such a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a distinct memory at the same time, because he just gave me total freedom to, like I said, to focus on what I was experiencing in my head as the character. And there are two things that I think I have to remember and I forget about that really help you make a character more realistic. A few things. One is the scope. So if it's a melodramatic script, or it's Shakespeare, or you are discovering something like the doll discovering autonomy, it's going to be a little bit bigger. You have to raise the stakes. The second is to remember the actions, like what you actually want, what your needs are. And the third is just to have the internal life a little bit. And especially with the third, I felt like I was given that opportunity, because he, instead of expecting me to remember a very specific arrangement of where he wanted me to move, he would adjust based on what I was giving. And he was instructing the whole time, quietly, not in a distracting way, but enough to help me figure out where I was going to go, instead of worrying about the logistics, which is a luxury. So I feel like that was the biggest part of that take. And I did experience that the first time in our first shoot. It was still, like, I feel like
No, it's
you know, but Josh is very good at that. He's able to keep his head on straight while giving specific instructions. He doesn't get too fed up, or he has patience. And at the same time, he gets to maintain that artistic vision that he has. So that was consistent.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Last question about Dollhouse. So there was no dialogue during the short film. How does that affect your mindset when acting? Are you able to put more focus into your actions?
I don't think anyone ever looks back at their work and is happy with it. I shouldn't say that, but you know, it wasn't a perfect performance, and there are definitely, if I rewatch it, I can criticize. But at the same time, I feel that not having the dialogue made it much easier to not overthink, because instead of worrying about how it sounds, you know, there's always something up here every time we speak, and I feel like every time I speak, I can hear how it is coming out of my mouth, and if I don't like it, then my thoughts start to slow down and stop, because I don't want to sound, I don't know, preconceptions. But with the focus on just my face and on the internal life, it made the scene, I want to say easier, but the camera picks up on everything. So I didn't have to bring it out too much. I was able to bring out what I felt was appropriate. And I never want to, in a scene, tell myself, okay, you're going to widen your eyes right now, you're going to look scared right now, you're going to raise your eyebrows. Instead, I was just totally focused on what I thought I needed in that moment, and what I thought my character was experiencing, or what I was experiencing. So rather than giving myself stage directions about how to show it on my face, it just happened because I was thinking about it. And I was able to think about it because I didn't have words, memorized lines in my head.
Well, that's so interesting. I guess kind of moving to like the general acting, what style of directing do you think best complements your acting style?
I don't know. I wish I had an immediate answer. I feel that Josh's directing style does complement what I'm doing, because we understand each other. We're good friends, and sometimes it complicates things when you're working with a friend, but in our case, I think it can help us. But I think just a directing, like what I'm experiencing with Zardoz right now, like a directing style that is collaborative, where you feel like you're being listened to, and you're asked about what you want to bring to the script, what you're experiencing, what you're working on. It doesn't mean that the director has to be checking in with you all the time, but there are a few things that I really appreciate. One is getting time to like look at the text, which you often don't get. And another is just, while it's happening, allowing your actor to communicate with you. And I know that not everyone can do that, because, like you said, a lot of moving parts. But I think just a director who listens, that's the best.
That's really cool. So it's like kind of like a personable director who is working with you, but also kind of quote unquote a friend, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you prepare for a scene with many lines or with other characters?
It's so hard, because most of the time when I get a scene with a lot of characters in a film, I only get the table read. We don't rehearse. I don't think I've ever done a film where I've rehearsed with the cast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, unless it's right before we shoot. So, and then with theater, it's obviously the complete opposite. And if you over-rehearse, then I think the naturalism kind of goes. I don't like to over-prepare, because I put too much in my head to worry about, and then it's not real to me. And I don't want fake performances.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, what was your question?
how do you prepare for a scene
Oh.
with many lines or other characters?
I get the lines down first so that I'm not thinking about that. And it has to be instinctive to the point at which I'm not worrying about in what order the words are coming in. And then I start adding objectives and actions and needs. And I'm not always consistent with this. Most of my projects I have not prepared for fully, and I probably should not be admitting that on camera or in general, but I'm aware of it because I can bring a lot more when I give myself the time to do so, and I often don't. And so if I am trying to, like my class performances are probably the ones I'm most proud of because I was able to do that. I had to do that. So I figure out what I want, and I figure out my obstacles, I figure out what's stopping me. And then, because I don't want to play emotion, I don't want to pretend, I don't want to play sad, I don't want to play happy, I don't want to play angry. So if I have the wants and the needs, it makes it so much easier because then I'm not faking it. It's not an image that I'm trying to replicate, it's just whatever feels natural in that moment.
That makes sense. Do you ever get a point when you're learning lines that you get so frustrated that you like want to quit? And if so, like, how do you push through that to learn the lines and get it down pat?
Well, I played piano and guitar for a number of years and viola. I've dropped off with all three, but I will get back to it hopefully. And so I'm used to that. I'm used to, and I did ballet for 9 years. I'm used to, you have to just keep, you don't have a choice. And maybe that's not the best mindset, but especially if it's like for a role where people are going to see it, or it's for a class where I have a teacher or professor I want to please. At the end of the day, I've got to do it. So I will get frustrated. But what I will do is I will stop. I will take a step back. I'll take a break, no matter how long it is. I will do something completely unrelated to it, whether that's laundry or going for a walk, or I'll have music playing so I don't overthink. So I'll stop and I'll come back to it at a very, often the next day. I can't do it. If it's hitting a wall, if I'm hitting a wall, I'm just going to keep hitting the wall.
That makes a lot of sense. That's like a really good way to kind of like distract yourself and kind of like calm down if you're like over frustrated. That makes sense.
And when you're editing, you probably...
Yeah. I do the same thing too, where I stop and I'll watch like a TV show, like a full like 20-minute like episode or something, just to calm down and or just take a walk and then come back to it later. Are there actors you try to learn from?
I never know how to answer this question because I need to study film more. I need to know more cinema. I haven't seen enough, and I think it is important when we're studying film in any way to know it. But people say Kate Winslet a lot, but watching her is one of my favorite things. That sounds so creepy.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, not staring at her, but watching her, she lets everything shows on her face. So watching the greats fully transform, I'm not watching it because I want to be like them or because I want to be them or because I want to perform like them. And obviously you don't want to copy a performance, but just appreciating other people's art. Doesn't mean that it in no relation to me, just in general, we want to be able to know art so that we can create, So when I take the idea pressure off about emulating or about my acting career in relation to theirs, because that's stupid anyway. There is no relation. I'm starting out, and I just enjoy the performances. That's not the answer. That's not the question.
It is. But like, how do you kind of learn from those actors or actresses that you listed? Like, what do you like pick up on that to kind of learn from them?
That's a good. Well, I love reading about people's processes after I watch things. Often I'll look and some of the. I've been watching Succession on HBO, and it has some of the best performances that I've seen. Brian Cox is so excellent, and he totally takes over the screen, and he's terrifying in a lot of these scenes. And I've watched the interviews. I love watching interviews with actors. That gives you a lot of intel. And the actor who was in one of these scenes with him when he blew up on camera said that he was shaking, the actual actor.
Oh, wow.
And Brian Cox he went to Lambda. Yeah, he went to either Lambda or RADA in London at like 17. So he's a genius, but he's done tons of Shakespeare. You have to be bigger than yourself. I did some earlier in the year and it was difficult for me. But so sometimes I like learning about what they actually do and what they bring, because it's hard for me to pinpoint an exact thing that I see on screen. But when I hear about what brought them to that point, it helps me understand what they're doing to get to where they are in front of the camera.
Oh, that's really interesting. How was doing the Shakespeare earlier in the year?
I had to bring a lot out that I didn't know that I had. So it was good because we all underestimate ourselves, and I didn't think I could do that. And I'm used to trying to underdo it a little bit so that I don't, because again, if you overdo it on camera, it just doesn't play well because camera sees everything. So, but when it's on Zoom and it's theater, it was disorienting because I didn't know if I was supposed to be doing camera work or theater work. But I just had to grow up and get over myself and stop being embarrassed, and just some lines while I was running it with the other 20 girls on screen, because there's a women cast, I would start punching the air, like start slicing, start doing physical things, and that would help bring it out instead of being worried about how I'm perceived.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Thank you.
Are there types of roles that you would be hesitant taking, or do you like challenging yourself to take roles that would prove your versatility?
I definitely do not want to be typecast, and I definitely do not want to play the same role or play myself, which is why I'm studying it, because many actors have made careers off of playing versions of themselves. And I do think that it helps when you are playing that, but I want to take on there's no story that I would probably turn down unless it was too, like, extremely explicitly, like, trigger warning, but like sexual violence, those stories I'm more hesitant about, even though I understand that when you film them it's different, but knowing that people are going to be viewing that and it could affect people, I think you just have to be, like, I want to be careful about projects that could accidentally hurt people, or, so that's the only line.
Okay. Why do you like taking that variety of roles, or what interests you in taking so many different roles comparatively just to one, like, typecasting?
Well, just like we want to hear stories from humans, I want to be able to tell them, and I think there's no greater honor than being able to do that, hopefully in the future. So I think turning down a role, I mean, it's not this simplistic because there are factors, but if you're just deciding you don't like a character, it's kind of like just deciding you don't like a human, which is, who are you to, who made you God? So I want to hear other perspectives, and I want to be able to give them the respect that they deserve.
Oh, that's so cool. What character in film would you want to perform that's already been done?
That's already been done?
Yes.
As in, like...
What character in film would you want to perform that's already been done?
Ladybird.
Ladybird?
Yes. That's my immediate answer.
Why Ladybird?
Maybe because I see parallels, like, to my family life or to my emotional life. So I mean, Greta Gerwig is just, I would love to work with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I know she has a very unique process with her actors. She often uses actors from other projects that she's worked on because she connects people. So I think it's in part because of who wrote and who directed, and Timothée, I'm just kidding, joke. But I just really enjoy watching the character.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take on, creators will remake things. They will remake series. They just remade Gossip Girl, and it's on HBO, and I'm not going to say anything about it because it's not my place. It sounds so negative again. No, I like it.
Yeah.
So, but you take on a lot of pressure. Like actors who choose to do Marvel, take on Marvel characters, they know how much that means because fan bases are so strong, and you don't want to disappoint people. So I know you're not saying that I would be like taking on a character if they're doing a remake.
Yeah.
But in general, I feel that the characters who I really love, I can only really see them being done by those actors.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know actually if I change my mind.
Yeah.
If I wouldn't want to do Lady Bird.
I guess like the question is more like if that movie was casting and it hasn't been made yet, like yeah. I mean, you kind of already like answered that, but that's kind of, I guess, what I was coming from. Yeah.
Sorry. Also, I mean, I think with series, there are a lot of characters in TV who I will think to myself, if I had been this age and in this place at that time and I could have auditioned, what if?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't realistically, but it is a nice idea to entertain. And we do, I mean, are there any characters that you'd want to, or are there any scripts that you wish you had contributed to? Or editing jobs?
I think, my dream job is to work on a sitcom, like a long-running like TV show, and kind of turning like D-list celebrities or like, I don't even know if that's like a list or whatever, but like low-tier character or actors that people don't really know, and then make them famous and like grow with them. But the one show would probably be to actually like be behind would probably be Everybody Loves Raymond, or How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
Either or, because I feel like both of those cast are like really like down to earth people and really like fun to be around. I can just imagine me like working behind the scenes with like those actors and stuff, and then like, I don't know, getting along with them and like forming relationships with them and bonds with them, and just like growing from like kind of quote unquote nothing to like stardom. I just feel like that's really interesting.
And there's truth to that, because there's a lot of camaraderie on those sets, because they spend so much time together. So I'm sure that would be...
Yeah. I don't know, I just like the idea of just having like, being with like a cast or group for that long, for like that long amount of time, and just, I don't know, growing and just being with them and seeing them for that long.
Yeah, because you don't get that in film, really.
Yeah.
We get limited amounts of time with people, which can be frustrating, because the appeal in joining theater companies is plays run its course, but you still are working with the same people, and you get to really understand them.
And I feel like with movies, that's kind of more hard to connect and carry that friendship comparatively to TV shows. Do you think modeling experience will enhance your on-camera acting capabilities?
Yes, because I have to get comfortable with both sides of my face, and I have to get comfortable with the way that not about the way that my body looks, because I think I'm getting closer to that, but the way that it moves, and my knees kind of go in when I walk, because I have this hip issue. Like a lot of things I can fixate on, but again, you just have to accept that that's what I am. And the modeling has made me realize that it doesn't really matter that much, because we're all these girls, they're all experiencing the same things. But also, it's forced me to develop like my posture is a little bit better, and that's helped me. Because when I walk into a room, an audition room, before I do anything, they start judging me. And often I come in and I'm nervous and I bring it in and, hi, my name is Gladia, and it just doesn't come off well. So I'm because I have to socialize with these wonderful people in modeling, and I'm scared, but I have to do it. And I have to show, like, I have to just be comfortable with what I have. That'll help me in terms of being able to walk into a room and own who I am. And yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I guess to end it on a light note or not so serious note, I guess, what's your favorite movie of all time? Or
Oh no.
or your like a couple movies that you are like now, or maybe just like enjoying now, or watching.
Magnolia is probably my favorite of all time
Okay, why is that?
because the characters are just I don't know how to dictate it. The characters are just complicated and given room to be complicated, and they're real, and the story is real, and it's moving without forcing people to feel things. It just is. And the performances are excellent, and the direction is excellent. And again, the script is just, yeah, that's the film.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I guess we're logging off now, and thanks
Yeah.
for watching. Bye.
Bye.